completely getting rid of police departments,
Well,
especially for those people who don't believe in carrying weapons themselves and stuff like that. It's like, okay, if you find yourself in a situation like that, in what way is a social worker or a representative going to help you if you're getting robbed or murdered in your house? You know.
I don't think anyone, when they say defund the police, I don't think anyone says to completely dismantle,
Mm.
police departments. I think it's more of a call to reevaluate what in our police departments we're funding. Like, do we really need to put so much into militarization? Do we really need to have, I think the New York City Police
Oh,
Department has
okay.
like
Uh huh.
500,000 cops in its employ. That's a fucking army. What the fuck
Yeah.
does the city of New York need a standing army
No shit.
for the citizenship for? Like,
Right. Mm-hmm.
that's not necessary. This
No, not at
supposed
all.
to be America. you
Right.
know. So like I think that it defund the police is something that can definitely be done intelligently. If we make the
Okay.
right cuts in the right places and make it so that we can still have these responders to violent situations
Mm-hmm.
while also making it ma- reining in the police from being so much of a like a city guard, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and more of like a protection service for the people.
Okay. All right. I guess I didn't see it like that. I mean, when put in those words, it kind of makes a little bit more sense. One thing I would like to see, um, and again, this is just based off of what little I know, and from talking to some of my friends that are fellow servicemen, one or two of them that are either currently police officers themselves or were police officers themselves. And again, this is an outlet to learn, so I don't mean to come off as ignorant. So by all means, for any of you guys out there listening and watching, make sure to chime in. Write your comments and stuff because I'd like to. We'd like to be corrected in the aspects where we're wrong. Again, we don't like just talking out of our ass. So if any of what we're saying is wrong and you have some kind of first-hand knowledge, please by all means share it with us. I think there should be a lot more emphasis, perhaps, on police training. Mainly because I mean the way I see it is this, and I compare it kind of like to military training, especially during war times.
Mm.
You guys still have, and by you guys I mean of course you, because Joe, you're a former military serviceman yourself. Which, by the way, thank you for the service to our country. Um, you have a certain set of rules of engagement that you know by what is it by that you're forced to be adhered to
Yeah.
at all times
Yes.
for fear of getting, I think, what is it, court martial, is that the correct
Well,
term?
so
I mean,
yes,
you get yeah, you
a
get put.
court martial will typically happen. Yes.
Uh-huh. But
Uh,
you have I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is that you are expected to be held accountable at all times for your own actions, even in times of war. And again,
you are held
those are.
accountable to the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
Mm-hmm.
You are held accountable to the host country in which you are based. You
Mm-hmm.
are held accountable to, if you're in a war zone, you are held accountable to world treaties that have been
Mm-hmm.
signed. You are held accountable to NATO,
Mm-hmm.
the and United Nations
Mm-hmm.
often. And so when you're out there, well, I shouldn't really talk like I've been downrange. I was up I was in Maryland the whole time, but the point I'm getting to is that service members have many eyes on them, probably many more than our police officers do,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that oversight is probably why we don't get a lot of not nearly as many war crime charges held against
Right,
the
of
United
course.
States.
Of
And
course, of course.
I think that's a similar principle that can be applied to police officers, is if
Mm-hmm.
they have, and there was a meme circulating on Facebook not too long ago about abolishing qualified immunity, and it was a joke because of the old, if you're not doing anything illegal, you've got nothing to worry about from cops. And then
Mm-hmm.
when cops complain, oh, but without qualified immunity, how can I do my job? And the response
Mm-hmm.
is, if you're not doing anything illegal, you've got nothing to worry about.
Well, yeah, and
So,
that's what I'm saying. Like, it certainly should be both ways because at the end of the day, I mean, off-duty police officers are just like any other citizen as well.
right.
So I've even heard of instances in which cops arrest other cops for breaking the law.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think that that's fair because ultimately, again, who better than cops to know the law? And of course, they should be held to the same standards because they should know the law.
Mm-hmm.
They should probably even be held to higher standards if they break the law.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment wholeheartedly. And again, kind of going back to the military service members, I mean, um, I can only speculate because I've never been there myself. I'm not former military myself, so I can only speculate how it is. But I figure that, especially in the middle of a combat zone, uh, you come across some very stressful situations, to say the least. Stuff that requires on the fucking fly
Mm-hmm.
thinking, and ultimately, it's decisions that are life and death for you and the people around you. So, with that being said, if even with all that going around you, you're still held to those multiple treaties and regulations and
Mm-hmm.
rules of engagement, where is the harm in implementing, excuse me, a similar system of accountability for our police officers, especially because there are a great amount of police officers that are former military
Mm-hmm.
ranks. So these guys know it, these guys understand it. So why not continue to be held to the same standard as our boys and girls do overseas and in so many different places where there's conflicts happening to this
Mm-hmm.
day? I think that's only fair because I think that honestly that would eliminate a lot of these things happening. And again,
Mm-hmm.
it goes both ways. I mean, people out there, you can't just go around saying fuck the police if you don't have like a legitimate beef with them. And I'm not saying it happens because even myself, within the city of El Paso, like I've been profiled before. As a teenager, I got stopped often, all
Mm-hmm.
because according to them I looked suspect. Like I don't even know what the fuck that means. Like why? Because I'm brown and I'm driving around in a beat up car. Like I fucking look suspect. You can't help it. And you know what? It does happen. It really does happen. And it doesn't just happen to blacks. It also happens to us Latinos.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens, I think, far more often than what most of us Latinos would actually care to talk about. Um, Sometimes for the repercussions of you know when it comes to our legal status. I know a lot of people are here illegally, so
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that shit kind of goes off to the wayside because they don't want to get in trouble and they don't want to get deported and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of that shit that happens from the Latino communities never gets reported because again, it's one of those things like, oh well, you just kind of let them do their thing and pray to God that they don't look too deep so that they can just let you go and you don't get in any further trouble. It doesn't mean that the shit doesn't happen. Um,
That's a
but with that
shame.
being said, again, like it should definitely be held both ways. Like I've seen countless videos of police officers as well that were only trying to do their job, and from 1 second to the next, they have weapons pulled out on them. They come inches away from death. Um, so as much as yeah, that is definitely something that needs to be reevaluated, and I do believe that cops need to be held to a higher standard of accountability than what they're currently being held to. At the same time, us as citizens, we have to remember that they're people too. You know, and I think it's very, very important. And again, you really don't know how you're going to react when you're seconds away from potentially losing your life. You know,
Hmm.
and like you've seen it, you've seen a lot of videos, and again, a lot of people aren't innocent, and they want like I hate that everything gets just over sensationalized and everything gets taken like just completely out of control. Um, there are some times in which us as citizens have taken it overboard with police officers,
Hmm.
and you know, certain people's intentions is just to harm people. You know, so we cannot kind of like we have to take the good with the bad and ultimately remember that they're people too. Like that's not
Yeah.
to excuse all the bad officers, like all those shitty police officers. Like to those of you police officers that are genuinely good people and trying to uphold the law in a 100% legal way and just start trying to do your job, I'm sure you know those people. I'm sure you know the people within your ranks that are just fucking out there and you feel that don't belong within your ranks. I think that at that point, it is your duty, honestly, to oust them because it's because of people like that that are making the rest of you look bad. And it's the reason why police and community relationships are so shitty. You
And it's
know,
also a one of the reasons why our trust in government is so low in our
of
country.
course, of
Because
course.
you got to remember when these men and women are wearing these uniforms and these badges, they are representatives of their government,
Hmm.
and they 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 operate with the authority of that government.
Exactly.
So when a good cop even hears about a someone in their ranks not doing what they're supposed to do, taking advantage, abusing their power, and
Hmm.
they don't do anything, they're only hurting themselves and they're hurting their organization.
Exactly. Exactly. And
And
I feel that it should definitely that every really genuinely good police officer should take it upon themselves to rid their departments and their ranks of these people because ultimately it's because of these people that the relationship between police departments and their respective communities is in such shambles because I know I'm sure because we've seen it even within our own particular um career choices or whatever, we come across people here and there that are like, oh, you should not be doing what you're doing. Like, you're doing a
yeah,
shitty job. You're just going through the motions. Only this is a far more important occupation. You know, like, this isn't an occupation. This is a civil service. This is a
mhm,
duty that you take on. So, to allow people on your ranks that are not taking the job seriously and are not performing their duty honestly with integrity more than anything, I think at that point it should become every good police officer's duty out there to oust them and do whatever it is that they can to get rid of these individuals. Like if we ever want to see those relationships being restored, those people have got to go.
I
And
heard
unfortunately, we don't know about these people until some very fucked up shit happens.
mhm,
By that point, it's too late. All the police departments can do at that point is just damage control.
yeah,
But how much damage control can you do with so many people have lost their lives in very, very fucked up ways? I mean, again, you got to recognize the good with the bad on both sides of the fence. A lot of people that have died in very, very fucked up ways, although not 100% of those deaths have been innocent. And at the same time, not every cop out there is bad, but you cannot ignore the fact that a lot of bad cops do exist, and
Mm,
they still have their jobs, and they still keep getting away with this shit day in and day out and day in and day out. You
mm,
know, I think on both sides we have to recognize the problems that we have, and that is first and foremost, we're not all saints. Most of us are sinners, and we need to learn to recognize and separate one from the other. If that makes some sense, like if a person has done bad deeds and stuff like that, I'm sorry, but sometimes people don't change. Even though they try to make a change, people don't change, and it goes both ways. Like it goes on the cop side as well as the citizen side. Like some people just don't change.
mm,
I think everybody deserves a fair shake, but you also have to look at the circumstances for what they are and be truthful as far as the events that led up. And unfortunately, the media has a lot to do with it, man. So many videos that have been half released or heavily edited to
mm.
make people believe one thing, that the events happen in one way, and then you see the full unedited clip and it turns out that things were in a completely different way. You know what I mean? Like there's been a lot of examples like that. Like I don't know if you guys remember that one little boy that was labeled a racist for allegedly laughing at a Native American's face or some shit like that. I don't know if you guys remember that
The
video.
it was the picture of that. I think it was some Catholic school in Tennessee.
Something
Or
like that.
they were
Mm-hmm.
they were doing a counter protest to the Keystone pipeline, I think,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and one of the kids was in the face of a Native American man who was protesting, and he had a little smirk, a shitty smirk on his face.
Mm-hmm. But then when
I
you
remember
kind
that.
of saw an unedited video, it was my understanding that it was actually the Native Americans that were harassing that group of kids.
Yeah,
And while, yes, he did have a bit of a shit eating grin on his face, ultimately, he was kind of just trying to, I guess, I wouldn't say diffuse the situation, but certainly not trying to engage the old man.
yeah,
But again, like shit got kind of like out of proportion. And all I'm saying is that unfortunately, the media does manipulate a lot of this shit, and it feeds it to the people in a way that ultimately um, further enhances the rhetoric.
mhm.
And
Yeah. It makes one side look ridiculous and
mhm,
the other side look like jerks, and then
exactly.
everyone's mad, and everything just gets more polarized
Oh
and all
yeah,
that.
absolutely. And nobody gets anywhere. Nobody wins in that kind of a situation.
Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely.
nobody except for the Democrats and the Republicans.
Ain't that the truth, right?
What can you do?
What can you do?
Gold.
Shit.
You can vote gold.
Oh man.
Jurgensen, Cohen, 2020.
Hell yeah. Absolutely. Honestly, yeah, we need a change. Like all things aside, for those of you listening, regardless of whoever you vote for, the stupidest thing that you could do in this point in time is to vote for one guy just because you don't want to vote for the other guy. Like really vote with your brains, vote with your hearts, vote keeping in mind the things that are important to you and your community. Like really, really consider who you align yourself with more and make an intelligent decision. Now more than ever, consider other options. Again, I, for the longest time, kind of felt that I was too conservative to be a liberal or considered a Democrat, and far too liberal to be considered a conservative, aka a Republican. And little did I know, it was just this year, as a matter of fact, that I started to realize that a lot of my personal ideals aligned a lot more with the Libertarian Party. Um, Again, don't buy into the hype of oh, vote for a third party is a wasted vote, or other shit like, oh, well, I'm only voting for Biden because we can't let Trump win again, or oh, I'm only voting for Trump because we can't let the Democrats win. Like, that is the stupidest fucking game that you can play because ultimately you're playing with everybody's futures. And
Fear is the weapon of the dictator. So if you want to know who you shouldn't vote for, it should be anyone who is trying to inspire fear in you or anyone else.
mm-hmm.
That is the policy I take.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So definitely, folks, for those of you out there listening, vote intelligently. Regardless of our own personal convictions and our own viewpoints, we're never going to, um, suggest or insist that you vote one way or another. All we insist is that you do go out there and you exercise your right. It is your right, and honestly, now more than ever, it is your duty, your responsibility, because honestly, this is probably the single most important election cycle, I think, in recent history. So you definitely have to do your fair share, do your part, go out there and vote. And more than anything, like I said, exercise your right to do it because a lot of people have certainly lost their lives, and a lot more than that, trying to secure your right to do so. So definitely enforce your right, go out there and vote. Regardless of whoever it is that you vote for, just make sure that you make an intelligent decision. Don't just vote for the other guy just because you don't like one guy. Like, in honestly, be open to a third party, look into the Libertarian Party, their policies, what they stand for, what they don't. I'll be the one to say it. There are a lot of things that I don't align myself with the Libertarian Party. There are certain things that I certainly don't agree with. There are certain things that I find out kind of just flat out I cannot stand for. But at the same time, with the Libertarian Party, at least, again, this is just me personally, there's a lot less stuff that I oppose as opposed to agree with in terms of the general Libertarian Party uh, standpoints and views, if that makes sense. Whereas I cannot say the same thing for the Republican or the Democratic Party. Again, I kind of felt like I was too liberal to be a Republican and too conservative to be what most people call or consider a Democrat. So just vote intelligently, really, really lay everything out in front of you, analyze everything, be really, really smart,
Do your
and
Googles.
exactly, exactly, and try to get it from the best possible sources. There's a lot of shit just whirling around, a lot of satire being made about this thing, and I think honestly, in the age of the internet cynicism and just overall kind of taking the piss out of everything, it's made it that much more difficult to formulate an intelligent um, train of thought when it comes to these elections because
Mm-hmm.
so many people are making fun of it, and myself included, man.
Well,
I mean, we've been memeing the shit out of this thing since it
oh
fucking
yeah,
started.
yeah, definitely.
But that doesn't mean that it doesn't hold its level of seriousness. I mean, at the end of the day, it's going to decide our fate and the fate of our country for the next 4 years. So you certainly don't want to cast a vote and then feel shitty about it otherwise. At least, regardless of whether your candidate wins or loses, at least you know that you made an intelligent choice. And if the person that you voted for isn't the one that ultimately stays, at least you know in your heart of hearts that you didn't vote for that guy. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that's something that I've been saying amongst my personal group of friends is that
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather vote for a candidate who I think is the best choice to run the country, the person that I believe would do the best job, than vote for someone just because I don't like the other guy.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
then the guy that I'm throwing my vote away for out of fear for the other guy is someone I don't want running the country anyway.
Exactly.
So that would be a shame, I
Absolutely.
think.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree 100% with you. Um, so yeah, I mean, with that being said, I don't want to say have an open mind. Well, I mean, you should.
Reasonably open mind.
Yeah, a reasonably open mind, I think, is the best way to put it. Yeah. Um, Definitely don't approach this election cycle with a very, very closed mind and really, really analyze where you stand in reference to everything going on around you. Because again, the worst thing that you could do is throw away your vote. Like that would really be throwing away your vote, is voting for one person that you don't necessarily agree with, all because you have a bigger fear of the other guy winning. Like the chips are ultimately going to fall where they may, but you at least want to have it clear in your conscience that your vote went to the person that you really, really thought would do the best job to run this country. Um, I don't think there's much more to be said. Again, regardless, if you still feel like you align more with the Republican views or align more with the Democratic views, that's ultimately your personal choice. Just make sure that these people are certainly aligning with what you want out of this country, regardless of whatever side of the coin that falls on.
I think the ultimate idea to get across here is vote for the candidate who represents your values.
Absolutely.
Vote.
Absolutely.
A lot of people
Yeah.
want that aren't able, let's say, to vote. Um, like you guys said, just don't waste it because the worst thing you could do is not vote at all. So
Yeah. Oh,
absolutely
yeah.
exercise
Absolutely.
that right. So a lot of people want to
Absolutely.
vote and they can't. So
Hmm.
make it
I
count.
think it was
Absolutely.
something like 52% of the voting population didn't vote last presidential election.
Hmm.
It was only like 48% of the population that could vote did vote, which means each candidate only got at, I think they only got at most 24. Hillary Clinton only got at most 24% of the vote.
Hmm.
24, less than a
Wow.
quarter of the voting population. So please, if you sat out last election, don't do that this election,
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
there's too much going on, and there's too much at stake, frankly,
Yeah. Absolutely.
to be passive about it.
Absolutely. No, yeah, I completely agree with you. It's just it feels like there's that much more at stake coming up, considering the candidates. It's like the election could definitely go either way, and there is honestly, like, for the first time, a very, very viable third party option. So if you find yourself like me, where you're kind of in the middle and don't really agree with either of the majority uh, political parties, if you don't align 100% with the Democrats, if you don't align 100% with the Republicans, give these guys a look. Give the Libertarian Party a look. Give Joe Jorgensen personally, um, kind of like get to know what her policies are like, what her views on certain topics are. And again, even if you don't agree with them and choose to stick with either red or blue at the end of the day, at least you are now informed that and aware that there's a third candidate out there, and you know where that candidate stands relative to you and whatever other representatives are out there. And again, I guess the best way to probably approach this, and the way that I'm kind of approaching it, kind of seeing what first and foremost is more important for you, maybe putting that like on a list or something, and then start researching each and every single candidate and kind of start marking the check boxes. That's probably going to be the best way to tell you where you stand amongst this whole shitstorm of a political climate. You might think that you're on one side of the fence, and when you kind of read into every little aspect of stuff and what every politician's stance is on a particular subject, you might just be surprised. You never know. And again, three choices are ultimately better than two.
Mhm.
And most importantly, stop voting in the lesser of the evils. The lesser of the evils is still an evil at heart, and you're not doing anybody any kind of justice or any kind of favors by voting with that mentality. You're ultimately
Especially not
hurting yourself.
yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You're hurting yourself, you're hurting those around you. And like I said, even if the elections don't go the way that you wanted to, at least you're going to have a clear conscience that you didn't vote for the person that won. Or you
If
might
you
get
don't,
lucky, like like who knows? Again, it's such a crazy fucking election cycle. Really, it really is anybody's guess at this point. It's like the little guy is actually bringing some strong points to the table, some very, very strong views that are definitely a good step forward. And then the big guys just aren't as strong this time around. So it's really a level playing field. Just look into it,
well,
do your due diligence. Mm-hmm. All right.
That was beautiful.
So, once again, for you guys, I mean, again, if anything that you heard on this episode today, if you have anything to add, again, for those service members, I have something to add to that bit of the conversation in regards to the kind of, I guess, the code of conduct that you're held to when you're overseas, especially in combat zones. If you'd like to add more into that, any kind of other um, questions or just insight that you guys have, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. We are reading everything that comes in, and we definitely appreciate the support more than anything. I mean, we are definitely looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say. Let us know if you're enjoying this type of format. Once again, help us in welcoming Joe to the team. You'll definitely be seeing more of him as time goes by. Um, and thank you once again for tuning in for another episode, guys.
thanks
I
for
don't know if
having
you
me,
have,
guys.
guys. I don't know if you have
Anytime.
anything else to say.
You literally explained it beautifully.
Yeah, you pretty much said everything that needed to be said, man. You taking all the shine away from us, man.
It's not humble opinions anymore. It's called Abraham's
Abraham's
opinions.
opinions.
Shit. No, no, not at all. Guys, again,
Uh,
thank you so much to our audience, Joe, Mikey, from the three of us. Really, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this, your Humble Opinions podcast. See you until the next time. You guys be safe.
Later.
have a good one.